crowd over St.
Hey guys, it's me, David, and today
and the thriving
I'll be
the
eating
Danish named after their queen,
chips and a hot dog bun.
Amalia.
3, 2, 1, go.
A Danish ship arrived in the harbor of
There's some chips on my plate too.
103 enslaved African men and women. They were the first of more than 100,000 enslaved people who were taken from their villages in West Africa and shipped to the Danish Virgin Islands. These human lives became a key piece of an elaborate international economic system known as the transatlantic slave trade. Between the late 1600s and the 1800s, roughly 450 Danish slave ships left the African coast for the Caribbean. When they finally arrived in the Virgin Islands, about 3 months later, roughly 13% of the enslaved Africans on board had already died or gone missing. Often, the captains and crew simply tossed the bodies of the dead and sick overboard. As the ships wound their way through the Virgin Islands, very few, if any, of the enslaved passengers would have seen the landforms they passed by. Their entire journeys were spent below deck, chained to narrow bunks. After arriving at the docks of Charlotte Amalia, the enslaved African men and women were sold at auction, and then sent on to plantations across the Danish West Indies. One of the biggest lay on the island of St. Croix. These stone ruins are what remain of the Wim Sugar Plantation, which was first established in the early 1700s. This is the Great House, where the owners lived. It's surrounded by a dry moat, which helped keep the house and those inside cool. But all around the house, enslaved Africans spent their days in the hot Caribbean sun, growing and harvesting sugarcane, and running the mill that turned it into a variety of products for export. Many slaves on plantations across the region tried to escape. When they did, they were labeled maroons, after a Spanish word that means untamed. One place that escaped slaves fled to was the dramatic northwest coast of St. Croix, a place known today
This
as
is
Anne's
dry.
Bluff.
Really, really dry.
They hid out in the rugged terrain of this still very wild corner of the island. From the top of the bluff, where the Old Ham's Light now stands, the African men and women are said to have tried to hail passing ships, hoping that they would carry them to freedom. Bounties were paid for escaped slaves caught dead or alive, and armed militias conducted regular hunts, trudging across the hills here at Ham's Bluff to flush out the maroons and deliver them back to the plantations they had fled. Danish law allowed for the brutal punishment of escaped slaves. They could be burned alive, hanged, whipped, or have their ears amputated. It wasn't until 1848 that slaves in what are now the U.S. Virgin Islands won their freedom by laying siege to the Danish fort in Frederiksted, here on the west side of the island of St. Croix. Today, in the center of Frederiksted lies Emancipation
And done.
Park. To honor that historic day and the unimaginable suffering that enslaved Africans across the Caribbean endured for 175 years.
That'll be it for today's video. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Bye.